Probably one of the best movies that I have seen in years. Y'all, we're talking about the Odyssey today, okay? Now, if you're new here, this is how I do my reviews. Like the first few minutes, we're going to talk about generic, non spoiler stuff like that or whatever. I will make it very obvious. I'll count to three when we go into spoiler alert stuff and announce it, right? So let's talk about the just generic stuff about the film. Okay, so again, and well, hold on. I've got my phone here, so I'll be referring to my notes on here. Okay, so it's the tale that's based on Homer's poem, right? So this is something that a lot of people are familiar with, and this is essentially like a modern take on it, which for me makes it very accessible for a say a variety of ages. Okay, so it follows the tale of Odysseus, and it's like an epic travel to, during, and from the Trojan War. Okay, so it's shot entirely on IMAX camera. I saw this in IMAX theater. Yeah, I cannot explain to you. If you can and you're able to see it on IMAX, you have got to go see it before it leaves theaters. Okay, now there's all-star cast in here. We're talking Anne Hathaway, Tom Holland, Robert Patterson, Matt Damon, many other recognizable faces that you're like, hey, that's so and so, that's so and so. Acting is superb in this, y'all. Cinematography off the charts good, right? Costumes are next level. Pacing is amazing. The sound effects, the score, at times like the movie, like the seats felt like they were shaking, right? Like you were there with them in these scenes and whatnot. Okay. Now it has me on the edge of my seat at times. It has me laughing at times. It has me jump scaring at times. It had me crying at times. It is a roller coaster epic ride of a movie. Now, like I said, it needs to be experienced on the big screen. Okay, I didn't even know. Well, first of all, I knew it was 3 hours going into it, and I was nervous about that. And I was like, "Can I sit through this?" Blah, 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 you know. And so then, yeah, you didn't even realize that the 3 hours went away. That's how intense it was, and how much you were just like, "No, what's gonna happen next? What's gonna happen next?" Like that type thing. Okay, and so I absolutely love this. Again, the pacing, all of it. What I compare it to, okay, and this is like kind of aging myself or whatever, but when Titanic, James Cameron's Titanic came out and it lived in the movie theaters for I don't know how long. I mean, it broke all sorts of records, but it was such an ambitious film for its time and just so gigantic of a film that it's like experiencing it on the theater, the big screen was just, you had to. This film reminds me of that same energy where the ambition and everything about this film is so top grade and over the top that it's like you have to see it in the theater, right? It's just that good. Again, honestly, I went into it like I want to see it because the reviews are so good, but I was like, I hope it's not boring. I was expecting a boring film in some way, like kind of like dry, literary, boring type thing. I'm not gonna lie. Y'all, again, I didn't even know 3 hours went by. I'm going to go see it again at the theater just so I can pay attention to maybe the more nuanced things of like how it was shot, technical things, right? That's how good it is, though. I'm going back to see it. This is very rarely I do this, okay? So 10 out of 10, highly recommend it. It is amazing. Now we are going to enter into spoiler alert zone. So if you don't want to know any of the stuff about the film, I'm going to tell key points in this, okay? So one, two, three. Okay, we're in spoiler alert territory, okay? And let me get to my spoiler alert section notes. Okay, so the structure of this is told essentially through many different perspectives and people's stories, right? It ultimately to me felt like chapters in a book. And I mean, it essentially is, okay? With these mythical lands and creatures that Odysseus and his crew and whatnot encounter being like the chapters, and in between is like narration, if you will. And we'll talk about like some of the characters who drive that storyline and that narration. Obviously Odysseus is one of them, but it felt like even though in those in between scenes the plot line was so thick and the connections and the stories and the drive of the characters was so layered that none of it was boring. Like in the beginning, there's a little bit of like, okay, like here we go, but almost instantly you're just thrown into the story and you're just like, whoa, okay. So for those who are looking for edge of your seat vibes, For whatever reason, even though I'm familiar with the story, I knew it was like an epic, mythical, whatever, but I just forgotten about it. So I forgot about these characters. So the first one you encounter is Cyclops in the film. And that was me being like, oh, I forgot about this. Like, whoa, y'all, I'm talking on the edge of your damn seat, right? Now, I'm not sure if it's CGI that they use for a lot of this stuff or whatever, or I don't know what kind of technology they did for some of the characters and whatnot. For whatever it was they did, it was grade A. It wasn't ever cheesy to me, not as some people it might be. I come from the land of like the original Jurassic Park is the most scariest and real looking one to me, way more than like other ones of recent times, right? Because CGI just doesn't do it for me. I understand there's some things that are so ambitious, it's just cheaper to do. Well, Cyclops to me was like clearly they were some he was some kind of something. I'm not sure what he was. But this is where you're first introduced to how grand of a scale this movie went to show you these scenes and characters and whatnot. But also, you start getting introduced to one of the layers of, and I don't want to say lessons, but maybe themes in the movie. And that is being that Odysseus is not a perfect, he's not a god, right? He is imperfect. He makes bad decisions. He does things like that or whatever. He has an ego, and war is not pretty. War is bad. There are casualties, and all these themes are present throughout, and you meet them here at first with Cyclops. And of course, it's like cool seeing Cyclops and the edge of your seat, and are they going to get out? And how did this happen? And how did that happen? And oh my God, he got one of the guys, and all the stuff, right? This movie is brutal in a sense, okay? It's not like, horror film gore, but I mean, it's, it has its, and not even gore, I should say. I mean, but there's monsters killing people in this, right? Okay, another one was the Underworld Hades, and this is where he meets fallen soldiers, and he'll specifically speak to one who we kind of encounter early in the movie when they're setting up the Trojan Horse scene. And this is another layer where you learn that, hey, you lied to us, Odysseus. You told me this, like, yeah, I'm betrayed by you, and I lost my life, and blah 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 blah, blah and all this stuff. And this is another theme where it's like, war is not pretty, right? And one of the themes of the Odysseus that comes through and is this whole thing that we'll see in several scenes is like having to make decisions as the leader where some will survive and some will die. Well, how do I say it? Some are going to have to die in order for some to survive. So it's like, what do you want? Do you want everyone to die here, or do you want some people to die so that some people can make it home? Because that's kind of how it's going to have to be. And it's this very tough decision that you see play out in a lot of these things, right? And then other times Odysseus just does stuff that's, like, hey, why'd you do that? And so I like that they don't portray him as this perfect person, but that was never supposed to be. Okay. So, and that world is very cool. It's very dark. It's very what you imagine. Okay. Now, the next thing, Calypso the nymph. Okay. So, this is where Odysseus spends most of his time. And it's mostly what I'm referring to when I say that it was a vibe of like chapters with a narrator. So, this is an island. He's there with Odysseus. And I'm sorry, he's there with the nymph, and he's eating lotus. She keeps feeds him this, and he doesn't remember his journey. He's there for years, and he's basically like slowly coming to throughout the movie and realizing like, wait a minute, I have a family, my soldiers, and this. And so a lot of the times where we see he's on this island with her, and he's recounting to her what he remembers and telling her these things, and then you're going back and flashing back. So a lot of this is told through flashbacks. Okay. And it's very good in that way. And he ultimately, of course, remembers, and he makes her absent leaves. Okay, now another one is, and I'm going to butcher this name, Laestrygonians, and these are the giants. Now, y'all, this scene had me on the edge of my seat because it was brutal. I mean, you really feel how big they are compared to the men, and you're like, whoa, the way it comes in and is introduced. And you're just like, whoa, these things are huge, and they are brutal, and they take out a lot of his men and a lot of their boats. And like the chase of them going down, and they chase them down to the water, and they get in the water with the boats, and you're like, oh my God, get on the boat, get on the boat. There's so much of this movie that creates that, again, edge of your seat feeling, right? Okay, now this was probably my favorite scene here. Circe or Circe or Circe, I don't know how to say it, the witch, right? So again, this is another place the men go. Odysseus is kind of going around doing his thing, and he quickly realizes, like, wait, something's not right. He shoots this deer, and the deer turns into a man. When he comes up to the carcass, it's a naked man that he's killed, and he's like, what? So he goes back to the house, and there's all these swine around. Well, in the meantime, the witch has fed his soldiers, his crew, and this is where it gets a little bit gross because they like are compulsively eating, and you're just like, what's wrong with them? And they're eating. I mean, it's gross, and you're like, well, maybe they're hungry, but it gets like over the top, okay? And so then she's doing this weird stuff, and they start to, you can tell something's wrong, right? So she then is like molding and doing this stuff to their faces and like sticking her hands down their throat. And you see her like molding them into swine. It's the wildest thing. And it's like gross and shocking and wild and bizarre and like interesting technically how they filmed it all at the same time. So then Odysseus comes back, and like the swine are trying to warn him, but of course they can't speak. And you're like, oh my God, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. And again, that edge of the seat. And so during this time, before, like when the swine are outside, she will tell him, or at some point during the trip, I can't remember, she will tell him, all your men will die, right? And like this is basically what's going to happen. And so he goes in this trip and knows that. Now I'm kind of jumping from the scenes here of which ones we're talking about. So I'm not going to order the monsters that he meets or whatever because it just kind of matters or whatever. Anyways, so she tells him this. So long story short, he saves the day. The men come back. They get on the boat. They leave, all this stuff. Okay. Then they run into sirens. Now the sirens like the song of the siren or whatever. And this is another part where Odysseus, makes a bad choice probably for himself or whatever, but he puts into danger his crew, in my opinion. But Odysseus is like, don't put the wax in my ear, tie me up to the things I want to hear their song. And so all the other men put wax in their ears, and then Odysseus is tied to the thing, and he's trying to get out, and he's screaming in agony. And later he describes it as almost like it's the best itch you've ever wanted scratched. It's all the things you should never do. They're telling you to do. It's like temptation and this and that. And they kind of briefly show them in this way, this like almost like leaves a lot to the imagination way. One of the dudes in the boat hears it, and he breaks off and jumps over the boat or whatever, and obviously he's going to die. And so again, very well done with the cinematography. Now the next one is, and I'm going to butcher this name too, is Charybdis, the whirlpool, right? And this is another major lesson that's presented to Odysseus and the soldiers as well as the audience. So the crew comes up on this as a big whirlpool, and one of them is like, we have to go this way. And Odysseus is like, well, we can't go that way. And so Odysseus basically lets them choose, and they go, and basically you run into the next monster, Scylla. Scylla, I'm not sure how to pronounce it. And it's basically this big like creature with all these tentacles that starts like eating the men off the boat. And so then it goes away, and they kind of make it a safety. And one of the dudes is like, oh my God, why didn't you say anything? Why did you do this? And Odysseus is like, I had to make the decision for some of us to die or all of us to die. If we went through there and tried to skirt around the whirlpool, we all would have died. So I had to allow, like, we had to unfortunately do this, but I had to let you think that, right? And these are the lessons I'm talking about that are presented where it's like this, what do you do? Okay, so then they eventually end up on this island and with a bunch of cows. And what's his name? Odysseus is like, you cannot eat the cows. You cannot eat the cows. And he's like, look, I'm going to tell you all this. That witch back there, the one that turned you into a bunch of pigs, she said you're all going to die. If you eat these damn cows up in here, talking about Wendy's, talking about where's the damn beef, the sun god or whoever it is going to get pissed off. The ocean god, whoever, is going to kill you. Okay. So they're like, okay, dude, swear, bro, we're not going to eat those cows. Well, what do you think is going to happen? They get off the boat. They unload. They have provisions. They run out of them. They're starving. And so Odysseus comes up and makes a little bonfire off in the cut one night. And they're all just going to town. I'm talking triple cheeseburger, bacon cheeseburger, large fry. The damn shake machines working. They all got milkshakes. Okay, I'm talking everything. They didn't have to pull up and wait on that double quarter pounder. Okay, the drive through was working. Okay, they are going to town on that cow. And he's like, told you. And they've been stuck on this island for so long because the winds were so strong. Well, guess what? The winds all of a sudden go down. And they're like, oh my God, we can leave right now. Well, what do you think happens when they get in that boat? You already know that the whatever God out there is like, nope, you ate my damn double cheeseburger. Y'all are cooked. and they basically destroy the boat, and the crew dies, and he doesn't really know what happens. And this is when he washes up to the nympho. I can't remember her name right now, but that's when he washes up there, right? Okay, so there's that. Now, there's a couple of other things that take place. There's the Trojan War, right, where they hop in the horse and they go in there and they defeat Troy and all that, and that's amazing to watch. And even that right there, like they're in the thing and they're describing it. All the men are basically like, just huddled in there. They're watching some of their men drown in the bottom when the ocean comes up, and they're in there for days. They're getting sick, and you feel that. You feel the grit of it. When they're out at sea, you feel like you're there with them. You feel those waves crashing. It's so well done. Everything in combination of the shot, the sound, all of it, except for damn getting splashed water on you. And I'm sure there's a 4D theater out there that does that, okay? Now, also at the center of this, I've gone over all that stuff, is a love story, right? So Odysseus, when he went off to war, leaves behind his wife. He leaves behind, their son, and they're like, "Is dad gonna come home? Is dad gonna come home?" And back at the castle, she's up here cross stitching, doing something, while all the suitors have basically taken over the palace, right? And so this whole thing of like, will he make it home? Because it's been like 20 years, and you see like all the snakes in the grass in the palace, and they're gonna end up trying to kill the son, and he goes off on a journey to find them, and they try and kill him, all this stuff, right? And so it all circles back to Odysseus returning back, and this fight breaking out. And I don't want to go into too much of the details with that or whatever, but it was very well done. Anne Hathaway played an amazing role in this. And that whole thing of this love story is doesn't take forefront, but it's obviously so integral to the story, right, of him returning home to his loved ones and how that pans out. And so it's always there in the background whispering to you and like making you as a viewer cheer it on, like, let's get him home, let's see them reunite, I want good to happen to these people, right? And ultimately it does, of course, right? Now, I already talked about the themes, the implications of war. It also in there is showing the power of women in their role with his wife, other situations of women and their strength in times like this. Because one thing that really settled with me is I was like, I never even, or I haven't in a long time, I guess, since college, thought about, wow, when these dudes go off to war, they this could be years that they're gone, right? I'm like, this is wow. And Odysseus was 20 years, right? Also just kind of the struggle of life where it's just like, my God, I mean, can you imagine? Like, even when he's out in the boat, like, how do you know where you're going? I mean, I know they had like heading north and stuff like that, but like with stuff we have today is what I'm doing is comparing it in that way. The human, I'm reading my notes now, the human need for belonging, love, betrayal, all of these themes are in here. And it's literally because of this, because you have these, the love story, the action, the war, the this. You have all of this stuff compacted into this movie that makes it so layered and pushes it forward. It's why you don't even realize it's 3 hours long, because they have done such a good job. There's nothing lazy about this, okay? Now you might have some people that are like diehard, like, I don't know what you call it, traditionalists, that are like, oh no, what he said, he called the man dad instead of father, or said this or that. To me, this is an accessible version of this story, right? Would it have the same impact if it was boring, dry kind of language used back then? No. Like, I would have been like, okay, I'd just be like, no. This to me is a film that will introduce a lot of people to this story, this poem, to this, this tale, right? And make them interested in it. And I think I read in an article where that was already taking place of like they're seeing this uptick in, people, I don't know what you want to call it, sales or downloads or whatever. But this makes it accessible. And I personally think in this day and age where it's like, TikTok level attention spans and stuff, if a film can access different ages and generations and stir interest in original works of stories and where they came from, or make people's interest peak to say, what was life like back then in this way? Let me go look. I studied creative writing, fiction, and all that in school, and I always say, if you want to know how something really was, you go read fiction books from that time period. There you will find more truth in there than most things, right? And I know it's a little over the top with this thing right here, but just parts of it that made me think think of little things like, yeah, what was that? What was that like when the men would go off to war? And like how long they were gone. What did that look like back home? And like one thing that was brought up, I'm just going off memory here, was when Odysseus' son is talking to his mom, the queen, about basically like, what do we do? You're gonna have to find a suitor, this, that, and the other. And she's essentially like, I've sat here and I've been run this damn house for like 20 years now, and it's all gone when I have to get a man to do it because a woman can't sit on the damn throne. We gotta have a man to lead the country or whatever. It's that kind of stuff that's just subliminally in the movie there, and that pokes its head out from time to time to remind you, and it's amazing. I just thought they did a great job. I could go on and on about this movie, y'all. So literally 10 out of 10. Absolutely suggest going and seeing it. And again, if you have the access and the ability to go see it on IMAX, do that. If you can only see it on a regular screen at a theater, do that. And then obviously if you can't, if you're not in a situation, whatever, you're not near something, whatever, definitely check it out when it comes out and makes its way to streaming, and give it a watch, right? It's definitely gonna be worth your time. And I think that it has something for everybody. I think it's literally something that of age, of ranges, men, women, children, everybody can go see and enjoy. So I will quit ranting on about it. I'm just super excited about it. I love this film. I think you will too. Definitely go check it out. And then we'll gather back around for my next review. So y'all take care. I love you. I'll see you soon.